Good morning, Hartwell.
Good morning, Kris. Good morning, everyone.
How are you this morning?
I'm good.
Good.
Sun is shining, and that lifts me up.
Awesome. So, this morning, what we thought we would dive into is the awareness centers. So, an awareness center. What defines something as an awareness center?
What well, what distinguishes them, I guess, is they're the only centers with the potential for self-reflective consciousness, and there are three of them: the spleen,
Mhm.
the ajna, and the solar plexus. And we're going to do a little mini series in these next 3 weeks on those three, just to start bringing a little bit more awareness to all the potentialities that
Yeah,
exist within the design.
fantastic, because it is just massive the amount of information that's in human design. So, we appreciate that. The spleen is where we chose to start. So, what can you tell us about the spleen, the awareness center of the spleen?
Well, it's a logical place to start because this is the center of our survival consciousness. This
Mhm.
is body consciousness. It is it is what we share with all other forms of life, including inorganic life.
Mhm.
So every form of life, all of them have the spleen in their design because this is the moment by moment response to life,
Mhm.
in order to keep us alive.
Right. So is that so? That's really interesting because I didn't know that. So you're saying that everything is spleenically defined, and the spleen is your survival instinct. So that animals, that's what their definition is splenic. So that's where they get their intuition and their instincts and all of that stuff to survive in the wild. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Okay.
all designs, all creatures have their own designs.
Hmm.
And, Ra has spoken about that. But every creature has a spleen in its
Hmm.
design. Okay.
Okay.
They don't all have the solar plexus, for instance. Most of them don't. There are other
Hmm.
things that aren't in the design of those creatures.
Hmm.
Now, I mean, of course, you and I have a spleen, but in our
Hmm.
designs, they're not defined. But it
Right.
is part of our makeup, part of our basic design as humans.
Right.
And this is what keeps us alive. Yes. So
Right.
it's the most ancient
Hmm.
of awareness centers, which we share with all of life. And
Hmm.
so most of the other forms of life, they don't have an ajna, for instance.
Hmm.
They don't have mental awareness,
Right.
but they all have instinctual, intuitive survival awareness.
Right. So, what can you tell us about the characteristics of being splenically defined
Well, splenically
or
defined people,
awareness center? Sorry.
yeah, no, splenic defined people have a consistent way of feeling good as they move through life, and a
Hmm.
consistent way of responding to um, their survival fears.
Hmm.
And so, um, every awareness center operates on a frequency. Okay.
Okay.
The frequency of the spleen is in this moment, in the now. And
Mm.
so the messages and the awareness that come through the spleen are they're for this moment only. So the information, you might say, the awareness, it's situational. It's now.
So is that like the gut instinct? So people that are have that center defined, are they more able to act with gut instinct, like they just feel it in their body?
Yeah, yeah. It's instinctive. It's a gut. You could say it a hunch, a gut instinct,
Hmm.
and this is why splenically defined people have a consistent way of staying physically healthy,
Hmm.
but they are spontaneous by nature,
Hmm.
and they need to listen to their spleen in order to stay healthy. And yet, I was doing some research on this topic. The hospital wards of the emergency wards of hospitals are filled with people who are spleenically defined because they had hunches, but they ignored them. So the
Um,
spleen, and then they sit in the emergency ward and they say, "Oh, I just knew I shouldn't have done that," and yet
mhm.
you did it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So what can you tell us about the fears that are related to the spleen? Like, what does that look like?
Well, this is the interesting thing. I just love how specific human design gets, right? Because the
Yeah.
awareness centers are all about some kind of fear. And
Hmm.
it's interesting, Ra makes the comment that all awareness is somehow related to fear. Seems a little
Right.
cynical to me, but it's an interesting thought to contemplate.
Well, fear is the other side of love. So,
Another fun thing to contemplate.
yeah.
So each of the gates of
Hmm.
the spleen represent specific forms of fear,
Hmm.
that relate to our physical survival.
Right.
Um, for instance, gate 48, which moves from the spleen. Remember the spleen, if you have a reference in front of you, and for those of who are watching this series, print out your chart or, so that you have something to reference when we have these talks. But the spleen is the center towards the bottom left of the chart. And the gate on the outside, gate 48, that leads up to the throat,
Hmm.
is called the gate of depth. And
Hmm.
its fear, the fear related to it, is the fear of inadequacy.
Hmm.
Okay. Other fears, gate 57 is the fear of the future. Gate 44 is fear of the past.
Hmm.
No, gate 50 is the fear of responsibility.
Um,
Gate 32, which points down towards the root, that's the fear
mhm.
of failure. 28 is the fear of death, or the fear of not having a purpose, or the fear of risking things to find a purpose.
Mhm.
And gate 18 is the fear of authority.
Right.
So if we think about all these different fears, we can often have a sense of, oh yeah, I've had an experience of that for myself. I've had an
Hmm.
experience of that.
Right. So, but would I'm so only if you had that gate would you have that fear, or like if you had that gate within the spleen, are you
Yeah.
saying that that's one of the things that one of the fears that you would have, or not necessarily?
Well, it might be one if you had a particular gate, whether it was part of a defined channel or not, it would
Mhm.
mean that you would need to be exploring or coming to a specific realization or accommodation to that
Mhm.
fear.
Mhm.
Um, Keep in mind, the experience of somebody who's undefined in the spleen is that they will often magnify the fears of the defined spleen. So they will be magnifying the fear of everyone they come in contact with who's spleenically defined. And they need to learn to treat fear as an ally, not an enemy. Because if you face the fears,
Mhm.
then you become wise about them. You become wise about how to handle them.
So
So,
this is like, I don't know, because I'm not spleenically defined. I don't
oh,
have anything in the spleen. So
mhm.
then does that explain why I pick up on everybody else's fear and I think that it's mine?
Yes,
Oh my God. No wonder I've been crazy all these years. Awesome.
yes. And so just like any undefined center is sensitive. And I
Hmm.
must admit, I have not given a lot of attention to the spleen. And today in my study, I'm thinking I need to give more attention to my experience around this
Hmm.
because it's also a place where I'm undefined. And
Right.
so you could be magnifying all sorts of fears from the people around you, picking them up,
Yeah.
magnifying them, thinking that they're yours.
Well, especially
Um,
right now, like with COVID going on
mm,
and stuff, like
mhm.
picking all that stuff up in a world that's, walking around in fear right now, basically. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So it's a really useful thing to think about that through the human design lens and say,
Mhm.
okay, how can I um, make this sensitivity an ally for me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like, there's a joke that I was reading. Apparently, this is a joke in the human design community.
Mm-hmm.
How does it go? It's about doctors and nurses.
Right.
So yeah, you know how bad I am at remembering jokes.
It's like me. I can remember the joke and I forget the punchline. So that's okay.
Yeah.
We can cycle back if you can't remember. And maybe
Well, I can't tell it the way that it was written, but basically it's the idea that it would be great for a doctor to be undefined in the spleen, because that would make him good at diagnosing people.
Mm-hmm.
But as a nurse, you don't want to be open in the spleen, because then you're going to be, they do all that hands-on stuff. You're going to be picking up all the fears of the clients.
Right.
So you want the nurse to be defined in the spleen, so that she can handle working with all that different energy.
Yeah, exactly. That would make total sense.
Yeah.
So regarding this fear, how does the experience differ for someone that is defined and undefined in the spleen then? Like, so how do they deal with it? What is some guidance that you give them?
Well, if you're defined in the spleen, it means that you have that you have a consistent relationship to that instinctive response that takes care of you,
Mm-hmm.
and gives you messages. Now, the spleen, remember, the spleen is the least powerful of the awareness centers.
Oh, really? I
The
didn't know.
ajna is twice as strong as the spleen, and the solar plexus is twice as strong as the ajna.
So what does that mean to be stronger? Like it would override that one
It
when you
means
were
that it means that the messages are more powerful and harder to ignore.
okay.
So the spleen is the quietest. It speaks quietly, it speaks instantly, and it speaks only once, you see.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're spleenically defined, you need to pay attention to that. But the thing is, you have a reliable way of responding to your fears.
Mm-hmm.
And that becomes a little bit of a in a sense, that helps you handle them. It becomes a balance towards the fear itself.
Mm-hmm.
If
So,
you're undefined, then you could potentially experience those fears quite strongly, but they're not arising from you.
right.
And so you have to learn, okay, I'm going to face my fears. I'm going to treat my fear as an ally. And that's where you can end up becoming very wise and powerful in terms of your health. So people who are not spleenically defined are often better at listening to their bodies, at cultivating their own physical health.
Yeah. So then what's coming to me is then it's very important for people with splenic definition to develop their body awareness so that they do listen to it.
And listen to their inbuilt messages, because they're naturally very strong and healthy. But if they don't listen to their messages ongoingly, then the splenic people are the ones that are healthy, and then get really, really sick.
Yes.
Because they're not as sensitive, because they have consistent and reliable messages always coming to them about their health. So, in order to not, so we all need to listen. Again, it comes back to, are you listening? Are you listening? Are you following your strategy and authority?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So next week, we're going to do another awareness center. Which one are we diving into next week?
We'll do the ajna next.
The ajna? Okay. Well, I'm sure everyone is looking forward to that. Is there anything about the spleen that you want to say to wrap things up before we go?
Well, the golden rule, if you're defined in the spleen, is listen to that splenic voice, and it'll take you to your own health. If you're not defined, never be spontaneous.
That's
It
good.
won't be healthy for you.
Exactly.
Don't
Like,
spontaneously eat those cookies, Hartwell.
yeah, or
No.
experiment. Like if you have line 3, it's trial and error. So I'm going to react spontaneously, and then that wasn't such a good thing to do. So
Well,
yeah.
trial and error is not synonymous with spontaneity. So
No, but I'm
you're
just
careful with
saying
that.
that's when I act spontaneously. It's like, oh well, I guess that was a mistake. I shouldn't do that again. Or the thoughts,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, well, we're going to say goodbye for now. God bless, and we'll see you next week when we're going to be talking about the ajna. If anyone would like to dive deeper into their design, please give us a call at Clarity 587-596-3333 to book an appointment with Hartwell. Come in and explore yourself. He's also doing an astrology course starting on the 22nd. If any of you are interested in astrology, dive into that. You can find the links on our Facebook page and on our webpage. So we look forward to seeing you again next week. Have a great day. Bless you.
Good day, everyone.